good when your numbers go up and they hear you. They start following your message cause they feel you. Haters in the rear view wanna ruin plans. Don't be startled, they just low-key fans. They tight like bands on the fresh stack. Knowing Rolo runs the city, bringing hip-hop back for the 51st year with my loquacious bands. Now this ain't no love.
Hello, my good people, and welcome back to the Rolo Runs the City podcast. I am your host, Rolo, and I am very grateful for you guys being with me today for obvious reasons. Man, I've been away for a while. It's been a little bit over a month since my last podcast, man, but a lot has happened, and of course, life happens too, but evidently, we have to keep the show going. And with that being said, that's just what we're going to do. But you know the particulars, man. You can definitely hit me up either on Facebook or Instagram at Rolo Runs the City Podcast, as well as Rolo Runs the City Music. Go ahead and hit up one of those two. You're going to find the content there. Feel free to check it out. And, of course, you can find me on X at Rolo Runs the City. And let's not forget, of course, if you're on the YouTubes, feel free to go ahead and check out at Rolo Runs the City. That brings you to the podcast, brings you to the music, brings you to everything. But if you really want to get that in totality of the Rolo Runs the City experience, feel free to check out RoloRunsTheCity.com. I just dropped some new merch, so y'all feel free to go ahead and check that out, man. That's RoloRunsTheCity.com. And without further ado, man, we're going to get this thing rolling. But like I said, man, it's been a little bit over a month since I've done my last podcast. But, a lot's gone on. We just, a little bit over a week ago, we just finished fall ball, for the Miracle League. So that's an obligation that I have to my parents, to my kiddos that I coach. So, of course, with that being said, it takes a lot out of your boy. You know what I mean? But I do the best that I can to deliver in any way possible, dealing with various things, making sure that I'm able to accommodate them. And not only that, man, just trying to get back into the swing of things too, you know what I mean? In reference to like focus, mental clarity, analyzing my health, because I'm always looking at that all the time in reference to things that need to get done in reference to blood work, checking proteins in the urine. I'm not trying to get too in detail, but man, it is what it is, man. We're trying to make sure that we try to optimize as much as we can to make sure that we're not having any issues. So with that being said, I'm also trying to get myself physically ready and prepared for the race on Turkey Day. Yes, folks that have been following my content know that I was badly injured during the marathon in Atlanta in March this past year. I normally run probably about once or twice a month throughout the year. I've done that since 2019. And of course, 2025 comes. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm ready. Let's do this, man. We're on the silver anniversary of the new millennium, and next thing you know, I get sidelined because had nagging injury here, had nagging injury there, and a lot of things, they catch up to you, and the next thing you know, you're like, man, I gotta shut it down. So I'm not trying to say I'm on some load management stuff like I'm LeBron or anything like that, because, I like to think that I'm cut from a different cloth, like them boys back in the 90s and the 80s, like, the GOATs, Kobe and Mike and stuff like that. So that's the way I look at myself. I look at myself as somebody who tries to deliver as much as they can. But unfortunately, I ended up getting sidelined, so I haven't been able to actually deliver the way I wanted to in reference to hitting up these races the way I wanted to. I had a couple of ultra marathons that I was getting ready to get into, and the crazy thing was I already had signed up for the Spartan half marathon, the 21K Beast, and unfortunately I couldn't make that race because I was severely injured. Like, I could barely move, I could barely bend, could barely walk. So it was kind of wild. But with that being said, I've been taking my recovery seriously. I've been going through PT, physical therapy, of course, doing cupping, massage, things of that nature, just trying to get myself back to where I need to be. Unfortunately, I'm not a spring chicken, so I've got some miles on me, but at the same time, I'm doing the best that I can to preserve myself and train smarter and not harder. And of course, when you get to a certain level in your life, I can't train like I did in my teens and my 20s. I can't do that anymore. You know what I mean? I'm not able to do that, and I'm not going to even try to fake the funk on it. But at the same time, I do know that my body is getting older, but I must train smarter. At the end of the day, we already know that gravity is the enemy, so we got to make sure that we combat that. But anywho, got that going on. But let's get on to the show, man. The show, today's episode, is about one thing: finish what you start. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people, they start things, they may start 20 or 30 different things. Let's call it multitasking, right? Which doesn't work. Next thing you know, you got 20 or 30 things that are incomplete, not finished, still open, ready to get closed, things of that nature. Doesn't happen. But anyway, it's very simple, man. You got to start and you got to finish what you start. It's not about you got to start and then we start this and then we start this and then we start that and then we don't get done. So we want to make sure that we see everything through. So I'd rather do one task, complete that task, and then move on to the next thing, as opposed to having 10, 20, 30 things open and never getting the task complete. So we want to make sure that we do that. But of course, this title of this episode is The Mindset of a Finisher, right? At the end of the day, that's what we really want to make sure that we do. What we're starting, we're finishing. When your body's tired and your mind wants to quit, but your soul says to you, you got to finish. Keep pushing. If anybody can feel me on that, raise your hand. Okay? That's me all day long. There's a lot of times where my mind wants to quit. And I'm like, I don't think I could do this anymore. And I'm just completely hurting. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. I mean, it could be whether if I'm running a race or if I'm up extremely late and I'm trying to actually put some good content together, things of that nature. And I'm like, man, I want to go to sleep. I'll do it tomorrow. Then tomorrow comes and you never get it done. So you want to make sure that you actually not only start where you finish, but you just keep pushing when the mind and the body says no. It's just plain and simple, right? And what separates the starters from the finishers? Let's talk about that real quick. Starters love motivation. And I'm going to tell you just like this. I've seen it. I've been a part of it. I've done it. You get to the finish line. But before you get to that finish line, you got to get to the start line. You get to the finish line, it's a celebration. But you get to the start line and you're pumped. And many people get to the start line and they get pumped and they're motivated, they're inspired, whatever it is. And I'm just talking in reference to running, but this could be any entity, whether if you're like just starting your own business and you're like, man, I'm trying to really, trying to increase my capital. I'm trying to work for myself. Things like that. You know what I mean? So the motivation is there. The inspiration is there. But what separates the starters from the finishers is that the starters love that motivation, but the finishers see it through. And what is the separator between the two? Discipline. And what is discipline? Discipline is doing something that you don't like to do and you get it done anyway because it's required. In order for you to become successful, that's what needs to get done. You may not feel like doing it, but you got to do it anyway. It just is what it is. So I'm not here to hurt anybody's feelings, but my thing is, you could be a starter all you want, but I'm going to tell you like this. And I particularly don't like this team. Obviously, I grew up in Massachusetts, and obviously our rival was the New York Yankees. So, of course, I'm a Red Sox fan, Naturally that, and of course a Braves fan. And of course, I ended up becoming a Braves fan, of course, because there's one or two teams that you would have seen up in Massachusetts. If you're watching New England Sports Network, the Sox are on. If you put on TBS, thanks to Ted Turner, you're going to watch the Braves. So you're watching either or, right? And then so happens I come to move to Georgia, so I'm like, yep, I know what they're about. You know what I mean? So, but with that being said, we're talking about the starters and the finishers. And there's very few starters from the New York Yankees pitching staff that you remember. Let's just be honest. But there's one closer that everybody knows. And he was the last player in the Major League Baseball League to have the number 42. Because obviously every team retired it because of Jackie Robinson. Mariano Rivera. Everybody remembers Mariano Rivera. You want to know why? Because he was a finisher. You knew when Mariano was coming in, despite the fact of the 04 playoffs in the ALCS, but we don't want to get into that right now because that's going to debunk my point. But with that being said, let's just say you saw Mariano coming in, the game was over. He came to close the game. You're not going to hit on him. You're not going to get on base. You're damn sure not going to score. It just is what it is. But my whole point is, that's what you want to be. It's always cool to start. It's always good to get to the start line. It's always good to feel inspired and pumped up. But I know this personally, when you start running, especially when you're in a race, it's like all of that dopamine of just hitting the start line, it wears off because you're pumped, you're ready, you're like, man, I'm doing this. You get a little emotional, you feel inspired, you're wondering like, man, why am I doing this? But then you start thinking about your why, and then you're like, okay, let me get this done. And then you start running. And this hits me no matter what distance. I mean, I could run a 5K, which is a little bit over 3 miles, or I could run a marathon, which is a little bit over 26 miles. Right? No matter what race I'm in, it doesn't matter what's the distance. That moment, that inspiration, that being pumped, it fades drastically. Like I'm talking about like you're up here and then you're down all the way in the bottom. Like it just, as soon as you start your watch and you're tracking your miles, it's a wrap. You're done. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I know when I'm running, I'm like, okay, now this is starting to hurt. Normally, it's a little bit delayed for me whenever I'm running like a distance, like a half marathon or a marathon. It hits you a little bit quicker when you're running like a 5K because you're trying to, put a little bit more force into what you're doing. So then that way you can try to cover the time faster. So like I said, either way, you're experiencing the same issue. So with that being said, that motivation dissipates. And that's the big separator between starters and finishers. And people who run the New York City Marathon, for example, can attest to this. You see all these guys, over 60,000 runners getting ready to go ahead and cross the start line for the New York City Marathon. But I want you to look at the finishers list on this New York City Marathon. And they give you a lot of time for you to complete your stuff. I'm going to be honest with you. I think if you run the marathon in Atlanta, if you're not in within 6.5 hours, they tear down the finish line. They still continue with their party that they're having wherever the finish line is going to be at, and it just is what it is at that point. Like you didn't finish. Like it is what it is. I think, dude, if I'm not mistaken, I think they got like over 12 hours, if I'm not mistaken, to finish that New York City Marathon. I could be wrong, but I do know that they've got some time to like finish. And not a lot of people end up crossing that finish line. Like it's a big thing. And this is my thing. Like, this stuff costs money. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not going to go ahead and pay to get into a race and then on top of that, not finish. I mean, it's just, that would be redundant. You know what I mean? That's worse than these old folks playing the lottery and, end up hitting and then dropping dead 6 months later. And that's what happens. You know what I mean? So it's not knocking folks that play the lottery. Hey, go ahead and do your thing, right? But my thing is, if you're going to start something, you should absolutely finish. And not only is it just good for your character, but it also knows that you can see things through. And a lot of people have a hard time trying to see things through. It could be getting into a new exercise regimen. It could be changing their diet. And I'm not saying going on a diet, but changing their diet, which means that they're adapting a new lifestyle. They may do something for, and I'm going to give them a little bit of credit. I know they just quit maybe before that, but they'll do it for about 2 weeks. And then they'll feel like the food is a little bland for them. Doesn't matter what kind of sazon, seasoning you got all over it, right? But with that being said, right, they'll just get bored of the consistent over and over same thing. I'm like, oh, I'm consuming this. I don't like this. I ate this 2 days ago. I'm not liking this. I'm not liking that. The body needs consistency. And not only is that in reference to working out, but it's also in reference to what you consume through your pie hole. So, it's good to see things through. And if you don't see things through, you'll never get to that next level. So, and you have to remember, finishers have a high tolerance of pain and the ability to move forward when motivation fades. And that's what we're talking about. Like starters, they get to the start line, they're feeling good. They're feeling themselves. They get the attention they want. Like, hey, how many people do you know that has, I'm starting a business and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And they start this business and it may be a lucrative opportunity, right? But you start looking at what they're doing and next thing you know, they feel like they're not getting any support, whether it's family, friends, whatever, right? But it sounded good when they wanted to start the business. Hell, you even had a couple of friends that were just like, oh man, that's awesome, man. Let us know what you got going on. But they'll be the same people that they may not support you. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, look, to each is his or her own. Like, do your thing, right? Like, if you support your friends, that's cool. If you don't support your friends, it's not that you don't support them. It's just that it's their mission and not yours. So I totally understand that. You know what I mean? Of course, a lot of younger folks, they think, oh, so-and-so ain't got my back, and they'll fall out with folks. It's like, look, man, it's not their fault that they don't want to buy your product. It's not their fault that they're not trying to listen to you. It's just you're not intriguing to them. It is what it is. So it's not a knock toward anybody, but you have to understand that you have to remain disciplined in what you do. The motivation is going to fade. People are going to be in the background. They're going to fade to the background. And next thing you know, you'll be by yourself. And I remember I felt that when I ran my first marathon. When I ran my first marathon, man, it was crazy because there was a whole bunch of people. It was a marathon and a half marathon. So when the half marathoners finished, everybody was just all happy. And, they went ahead and they ran off and they went to the finish line. And then I said, damn, I got another 13 plus miles to go because I was at the halfway point, right? And that's a lonely road. You know what I mean? And it just goes to show you that what you do in private is what you're going to get celebrated for in public. And you may not get celebrated at that time when you're in public because you may still just be by yourself. But in order to see things through, and you do cross that finish line, there's going to be people there waiting, and they're going to see you and they're going to celebrate you. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think that's a great thing. It's a great accomplishment, but it's a lonely road is what I'm trying to tell you. So whenever that motivation fades, man, you got to make your adjustments. You know what I mean? So the start line in a race is a perfect example, right? Like I said, man, people just get pumped up so much, man. Like they're ready to just, run right through a brick wall. But unfortunately, that brick wall is whatever distance you're trying to cover. And that brick wall is not right there. And the metaphorical brick wall is the finish line. But you got to work to get there. And when you don't have the finisher's mentality, you can get gassed out really easy. And you could be in a situation where you'll just end up falling flat on your face. And I don't mean that literally. I mean, although that happened to me in my last marathon, I fell flat on my face. And I don't know how the hell I got up and I ended up finishing because I got hurt on that run. But I got it done. But it happens. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not anticipating 1 mile at a time, next mile, and you just think you're going to you look at this thing as like, oh, I'm going to crush this. I mean, you're psyching yourself out. You know what I mean? So you have to make sure that you understand that you have the finisher's mentality where you know that it takes discipline to follow through. Many people, and I'm talking about racing and stuff like that because, I run, that's what I do. But, I mean, this applies to any facet of life. You just have to make sure that when those days get dark and those days get cold and it's lonely and you want to put your best foot forward, but you're too tired to get things done, dude, you got to push through anyway, man. That's whatever entity that you get involved with requires. Like, you have to continue to just push through. It is what it is, But, in reference to like, I say, for instance, for me, like, whether you're running a marathon, building a brand, staying in sobriety, or, pursuing your purpose, you know what I mean? You have to fight that battle of procrastination and laziness, man. Winning the mental game is absolutely key. And the reason why I say that, man, is because so many things people want to get started, and everybody has the best of intentions when they're trying to get something done organically. Whether they want to start a new business or they're saying, hey, I'm tired of being out of shape, being sedentary. I really want to go ahead and I want to turn my life around in reference to how I physically look, how I feel. It's not an easy road. And like I said earlier in the example, you get to a point where you're trying to build consistency. Consistency is boring. You're changing your diet. If you're used to eating corn chips and Cheetos and Doritos, nacho cheese, whatever the hell you are used to eating, and you go from that to like eating hard-boiled eggs and cracker cut cheese and whey protein shakes, that's just some of the stuff I have, right? I mean, it's boring. You know what I mean? But I'm trying to make sure that I have some healthy fats, my protein. I don't drink soda. It's not good for your bones, so you shouldn't drink soda either. It is what it is. Obviously, and I don't drink alcohol. Not saying that I never did drink alcohol, because I did, but I don't drink alcohol anymore. In fact, next month will be 2 years since I've dived into sobriety, right? Beep, beep, December 7th. That's what's up. But it's just, like I said, consistency is a boring lifestyle, right? But it gives you the life that you want. It helps you become healthier. In reference to monetization, you become a little bit more savvier with your money, whether you're increasing your income, if you're able to save a little money, put a little money away, investing your money, making sure that it grows, things of that nature. All this stuff is boring, but it happens to be the things that people want, so then that way they can achieve the better life. So consistency is absolutely boring, but the only way you get the life that you want is by being consistent. So you're going to have to just be a little boring. Like, it's funny. I was thinking, I was talking to my wife the other day, and we were talking about on how we are on a Friday night, and she'll be doing her thing and she'll be working on a Friday night, and I'm working on my stuff, and it's Friday night, and then my son's got his laptop and he's like doing some homework, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, we some boring ass folks, huh? But it's funny because the predictability that we live allows us to live the best life that we want to live. Like, I don't got time to be going out there and wasting my time at some damn club, or, dude, I'm too grown for that. You know what I mean? Or friggin', getting drunk and just doing dumb stuff. And, dude, that's not where it's at. You know what I mean? So I'm just going to be flat out with you. It just is what it is. But with that being said, you have to really win the mental game. And a lot of times what robs us of our dreams is the fact that we procrastinate and we're fighting laziness all the time. I'm going to be honest with you. There's many days where I don't want to do anything. You guys know the deal. You guys know what I do. 4:30 in the morning, I'm up and I'm working out, man. And like I always told you before, man, it is not a pretty process. It's absolutely ugly. So you will not see me doing a get ready with me video. That's not going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, I'm getting up, cruddy eyes. I'm like, dude, I got to wash my face, brush my teeth. Let me get this workout in, get the workout in, then get my personal hygiene in after that, and having my breakfast, doing what I got to do. But like I said, just understand that if you want to achieve anything in this world, and if you want to be a true finisher, man, you're going to have to be disciplined, and discipline is going to require you to do things anyway, even when you don't want to do it. And you're going to have to be extremely boring, because that's what consistency is. Okay? So, at the end of the day, finishing is a skill. Okay? It's not really a feeling. It's something that you have to really learn how to procure, because of the fact that there's many folks out here, they'll try to sell you a get-rich-quick scheme, or they'll try to be like, oh, just do this and do that, man. Just go, if this is how you feel and you want to do the 4-hour work week. And I'm not knocking Tim Ferriss for that or whatever. I seen that book recently when I was at Books A Million. But the whole point is, don't think that people are literally selling you a shortcut because you're going to work 4 hours a week. No, you built systems so then that way it can help you free up some time, but you're going to work a little bit more than 4 hours. So, finishing is absolutely a skill. It's not just a feeling. So even if you feel like you don't want to work, you have to put the work in anyway. Okay. Most people stop and 90% not realizing that they have 10 more percent to go to reach their goal. And the reason why they don't do that is because many things are not measured. Like, look, we're not in school anymore in reference to like being grade school students, where it's like, hey, at the end of the year, if you go ahead and you do this, you can possibly end the year with a 95. And success is not linear. It really isn't. And it doesn't matter, and what business entity that you're involved in. Like, it's really not linear. Success, especially like if you're into entrepreneurship and things of that nature, like, it's definitely not linear, man. You have so many peaks and valleys. But the whole point is, the thing that crushes many of the obstacles is just absolutely just doing what you can to be consistent, man. Be persistent in your approach. And it's not so much about being annoying and being spammy, but it's all about being sure and being consistent in who you are. It is what it is, right? And you also have to look too, you have to reframe failure as unfinished work. Okay. Not defeat. I think about it right now, right? You see me right now, if you're watching me on YouTube, and I have all these lights around me, just blinding me, right? But think about that. Developed by Thomas Edison, right? Thomas Edison quoted, he said, I have not failed. I just found 10,000 ways that it won't work, in reference to development of the light bulb, right? And if he didn't have that fail forward approach, we would still be using candles for the nighttime and relying on the beautiful moon for some lunar light. You know what I mean? And you really have to really think about that, because so many people are quick to fail and quick to just quit, as opposed to failing forward and just looking at it as a lesson and saying, okay, this is unfinished work. This is what we're doing. I remember I did a science project with my son a couple weeks ago, and the science project didn't actually work the way we wanted it to work. However, it was science. So he did everything that he needed to do. He came up with his hypotheses. He did his research. He had his conclusion of what was going on. We actually did the implementation of the experiment. It didn't work out well, but this is science. And I told my son, he's 10 years old. So I told him, I said, don't get discouraged. This is science. This is a scientific process that we actually went through. So just feel good about what you did. Know that you tried to do it. And the project didn't work the way you wanted to. However, you still went through the process of getting it done. And of course, he got an A for it, because even though his project didn't work the way he wanted it to work, at the end of the day, they saw that he did the proper research. And trust what I tell you, he's outshining many kids in his class, because, now let me just be honest with you, there's a whole bunch of freaking kids over there that their parents don't give a damn. Just being very honest. so they're not keeping track and working with their child. So, I mean, it was amazing. And that's another episode, I guess, for another day. But, dude, he's got about 22, 23 kids in his class, and him and 2 other students were the only ones that finished the science project, and they had over a month to do it. So that goes to show you. Stay consistent, stay persistent, and show follow through. I'm trying to do that for my 10-year-old, so then that way he understands that. So that's stuff that I'm preaching to you guys right now. But anyway, so you got to think about this, right? I think to myself, so I'm going to ask for you guys, right? So what is it this year that you started but you didn't finish? So I'm going to tell you for me, which is the reason why I haven't really been on lately, is because I was supposed to release a project in June in reference to an album, right? I haven't released the album in I don't know how many years, right? But I've released singles the past 2 years, and in 23 and 24. I haven't released anything in 25 because I was planning on releasing an album in June of this past year, which is, of course, 5 months ago. But I never got around to actually polishing it up and finishing it up. And it's not that I didn't have the material recorded. It's just I didn't feel good with the stuff that I was putting together. So I said, this is not going to work, And I'm not trying to be too meticulous. Like, I ain't doing like Dr. Dre or nobody like that, right? They're still waiting on the Detox album that was supposed to drop freaking 22 years ago, right? But no, that's not what I'm saying. I just didn't feel good about the project that I was putting together because I said this can come out a little bit better. Let me try to refine my sound, things of that nature. But and of course, if you guys have not heard any of my material from 2023 and 2024, please feel free to do that. Rolo Runs the City music. You guys already know what to do. But anyway, that's something that I think about that I haven't gotten done. So are we going to get around to that? Absolutely. We're thinking first quarter this upcoming year. So that's a good thing. But with that being said, we'll see how that follows through. But think about something that you have started this year that you didn't quite finish. And how is that making you feel? Do you feel that you're still being accountable on trying to get this thing done before the year ends? Or are you thinking about maybe something that may be rolling over to next year? And it's not about a New Year's resolution and nothing like that. That's not what we're talking about. But what we're talking about is actually finishing what we started and showing some follow through and really not letting a date determine when we get this thing done. So if you notice what I said, we're thinking about probably getting it done first quarter next year. So that could be January. That could be, third week of March, first quarter, right? I'm not really putting a timetable on that because it's not so much about a new year, new me. No, like we're not doing that. Like we've already built something concrete. We just need to continue to build, polish, and then that way we can distribute. And that's just anything that you do. So always have the mentality of doing what you can to finish. But anyway, man, that was a mouthful. But I am so glad that you guys were with me this week. I appreciate you guys, man. I missed y'all. I hope you guys missed me. But, like I said, man, feel free to hit me up on the socials, man. Rolo Runs the City Music, Rolo Runs the City Podcast. That's at Facebook and at Instagram. You check both of those out. You can find them there. Definitely find me on X at Rolo Runs the City. And, of course, if you're watching me on the YouTubes, at Rolo Runs the City. And don't forget, man, you can find me on all of the platforms, whether if it's music, whether if it's podcast, Rolo Runs the City, you're going to get either or. Okay? But look, y'all take care. Godspeed. And don't forget, man, do not forget to check out RoloRunsTheCity.com. Like I said, I just dropped my merch. So I do have my store on there. Please feel free to support, man. But I do appreciate everything that you guys have done. I appreciate the likes. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the DMs. Then y'all take care. Godspeed. And always remember, folks, what Rolo always says, be the goat, never a sheep, and don't sleep on your dreams. Peace.